Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our third and final day of our BPSO Symposium. I think, so what's the energy? Doris just always likes to ask the question, what's the energy from 0 to 10? So what is the energy in this room? Let's hear the energy in this room for the final day. 10! Woo! Okay, thank you. All right, so we have another action-packed day for you today, and I'm so delighted to bring greetings again. We have just a few final updates. Please check the program one more time for your final sessions. We have a switch in rooms. Varley room is now the breakout room, and Johnston room is now the quiet room. You will be receiving some final updates next week from our team about expenses and slides, access to slides. Today, our tree is growing even bigger, and today we have a question that's focused on you. How has BPSO helped you grow personally or professionally? So let's make that tree even bigger and better. And this is a final chance also for you to take photos at the photo booth, so please enjoy that. Also, a reminder that we have our social media challenge, and I don't know what the prize is that Doris is going to offer, but the hashtag is BPSO Symposium and tagging at RNAO. So here are just a couple of examples of some beautiful tweets or posts. There's one from Qatar, and there's one from Nipissing University, and look at that from Jennifer Walker. That's a 360 video. That's actually a video, so check it out. I just did a screenshot of that, but look at how much fun that is. And then there's a picture of our tree that is going to grow even more. So today, this is our agenda. We're going to have, just shortly, we're going to have a plenary panel in this room of BPSOs sharing outcomes of BPG implementation locally and globally. And we're also having Minister Cho from the Minister of Long-Term Care joining us. So that's a wonderful addition to our morning program. You're going to have 3 opportunities for final poster viewing and networking. And 4 breakouts today as well, but at around 10:30, we're going to have our sector breakout rooms. So I'll show you the breakdown of that in just a moment. So remember to look at the sessions in the blocks, okay? So the session block times to find the sessions that interest you the most. And we finished today at 3:30 to 4:30. We're going to have a small surprise and closing remarks from our founder and visionary, Dr. Doris Grinspan, and a traditional closing with grandmother Dorothy Peters. And this is the map of the sector breakout. So just take a quick look at that as well, so that you know that there are 8 to choose from. And if you're not like neatly, tidily fitting into one of those sectors, choose one of the ones that you think you're most interested in. So, Doris, may I ask you to get us started, please, with the outcomes panel and any other opening remarks that you might want to offer this morning as we get started. And if you're on the outcomes panel, perhaps you want to start coming up towards the front of the room, please.
The panelists, the wonderful panelists. Okay, let me call them. So, we have here Banu, is it correct?
Yes.
Okay, Adam.
Yep, they're coming here.
Here you go. I know Sally's not here, she's joining by video, all the way from Lanzhou, and our colleagues are here to applaud with us. Marjorie, I saw her last night, wonderful. Estercita Gonzalez, she's coming from Spain, but she's a video, and I just saw her a week ago. She really runs the whole BPG program across the country. Amazing work with the other person that I mentioned, Maite. And Roberts, here you go. And Maria, Maria, every time I say your name, in every event that we have been, I want to start to sing the Maria, 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 because I love that movie. I so do. I so do. Please have a seat. So, we have a very important panel today. If you, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, that's good. And we will go, I don't know if they told you that, but we have our ways here. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We will go from individual BPSOs to national ones. Or you have the order. I better don't mess up because they have all this ready. Let's behave, Doris. Follow orders. Okay. I told yesterday someone, I'm not very good at that. Okay, I almost fell out of, did you all do that video? Who was standing next to a few of us when I almost dropped out of there because I was not following orders, but now I will. Okay, so we will start with Banu Sundaralingam. Is that the way to pronounce it? Please tell me how. Please, I want to...
It's Banu Sundaralingam. Yeah, you did it right. Yeah.
More or less, but I think a bit better. Adam Ben from BHA, you are going first. After that, we will have a video from our amazing colleague Sally Doe. And Sally is in Lanzhou University Second Hospital, a tremendous BPSO there, and soon to become a BPSO host for the region. And yes. And it was quite interesting. I was talking with Sally, and I believe Heather was sitting with me at ICN, and she told me she wanted the entire region. And I had the rightness to ask how many hospitals are in the entire region. And then she started to write state by state, and in each state was like 100. And I said, can't be done, it can't. So we are going with her immediate state, like provinces here. China, right, is very big. They do amazing, amazing, amazing work, and I know they will lead amazingly too. And then we will have, I mentioned Marjorie, Esther, I mentioned to you Esther before, across the country, in Spain, and then Ann Roberts, you will present. And Ann Roberts is from Hospital Montfort, and they are both BPSO direct with us, and also BPSO host for Francophone. And Marjorie is also BPSO, really OHT. We spoke about all of those in the first day. In fact, I should test you what they are. And Maria Chervel, and Maria is the first BPSO specialty for long-term care. So let's get going. First to Banu and Adam. You want to go to the podium, or do you prefer the mic? Up to you. The slides. Here you go. Unless you prefer me to do whatever you prefer is easier for you. The green. Green. Yes, the green. The green on top.
So good morning, everybody. My name is Banu, and this is Adam. We're here from BPSO Home Healthcare, which also has a BPSO designation. Next slide.
The green up.
Oh, whoops. There we go. Okay. So I'm a professional practice specialist and educator for rehab at BPSO Home Healthcare. But by background, I'm actually an occupational therapist. So BPSO Home Healthcare is a community healthcare organization made up of over 3,000 staff. And we have OTs, PTs, SLPs, social work, dietitians, nurses, and PSWs. And we provide services across the GTA, London, and Ottawa region. So we worked on implementing the RNAO best practice guideline assessment and care of adults at risk for suicidal ideation and behavior at VHA to address suicide prevention clinical practices at VHA home health care, and primarily looking at it from a community care lens. So myself and my BPG co-lead, we first completed a needs assessment, and we completed a gap analysis and compared the guidelines, practice recommendations to the current suicide prevention practices at VHA. So we have to be mindful of some of the limitations of comparing this guideline to community care practices. So, for example, clinicians at VHA primarily work within a physical health caseload, and when you work in community care, you're limited in the number of visits you get. So, for example, in OT, you get maybe a maximum of 3 visits, so you have to complete within 60 days, which will impact the length and the depth of your interventions that you engage in with your client. And clinicians in the community are primarily working independently, so you're alone in the client's home. You're not really aware of who else is involved in the client's circle of care. So we looked at the recommendations that could realistically be applied at VHA and more so focused on clients who are at imminent risk. We also consulted with leadership staff for frontline providers to assess the current state of suicide prevention practices at VHA. And we gathered information on the risk assessments that they use, their documentation practices, how they report clients that are at risk for suicide, and also we assessed. So we gathered information on resources and education that they think they would benefit from, and they think that their team would benefit from. And some of the findings were that currently there's no up-to-date formal suicide prevention training available at VHA, and it is only briefly mentioned in some of the new hire staff orientation. And staff also reported a lack of confidence and understanding of how to assess and intervene with clients who are at imminent risk. Lastly, we also sent out a survey to frontline providers to gauge the education needs for suicide prevention. And the questions that were asked range from how confident staff are in preventing suicide in clients, which average around them being somewhat confident. And this survey helped us inform the topics that we want to include for our resources and the education that we created. So after completing our preliminary research and needs assessment, we created a suicide prevention BPG champions committee, which consisted of clinical leaders and supervisors and frontline staff from all professions. And they were really the advocates for implementing the changes and this work throughout the organization and in their teams. So we reviewed the gap analysis with the BPG committee, and we had to consider what was realistic to accomplish within 1 year at that time, with our given budgets and supports and resources. And so we decided to focus on these 4 things, which was to update our current suicide prevention policy, create specific procedures for professionals to follow in terms of how to manage a client and staff who have encountered a client who's at risk for suicide. We also created a suicide prevention e-module, and we also created accessible staff and client community resources to be used in practice. So this slide kind of summarizes what we've accomplished by the end of 2022 within the year when we worked on this BPG. So we updated the suicide prevention clinical policy with evidence from literature, and we looked at the professional college standards to ensure that our policy outlines current best practices regarding suicide prevention. We also updated and created specific processes for suicide prevention practices for frontline staff, our office staff who are call response agents, and also supervisors, so that each professional was aware of their role in managing risk for clients who are at imminent risk. But also we want to ensure that supervisors were aware of the supports and resources that they have to support their staff who have encountered a client that is at risk for suicide. We also piloted a suicide prevention e-module, which was created for all staff, and it was really an introduction to suicide risk management in the community, and providers were also provided with tools to address suicide risk, specifically when it's imminent. We did complete a pre and post survey to assess people's confidence level, and it did increase. We found an increase of about 56%, which is pretty good. We also created region-specific community resources, which list various mental health and crisis supports available per region, so for GTA, Ottawa, and London. So that can be provided to staff and clients. VHA also has its own intranet page called The Loop, which is where we house all our best practice resources and guidelines and policies. So now we have a dedicated page to our suicide prevention BPG work, and it has all our, like, the policies that we updated, links to additional resources, the resources that we created, and also a link to our e-module. And lastly, we also created, we revised our lanyard cards. There's lanyard cards that providers carry around in the community. So on one side, it's an updated, shortened procedure to follow for a client that's in crisis. So it lists the questions they can ask for clients at risk, and also additional supports they can give clients if they aren't as at risk, they just need additional supports. The other side includes the work that Adam did. Last thing I want to mention is we did collect data on the suicide risk reports at VHA from 2021 to 2023. So 2021 is when we started this work. Just note for 2023, we collected this data in August, so it's expected for the numbers to be higher by the end of December. So there is an increase in suicide risk reports. There's an increase of about 44%. So this could be because there is a higher awareness for people. Now people have the knowledge of how to report risk, how to identify risk, and so they know who to report it to. So that could be the reason why there is a higher number. But in conclusion, with this project, we truly only scratched the surface on suicide prevention in the community. There's a lot more work to be done, and we identified that through this BPG work. Some next steps would include providing more intensive suicide prevention training, like more information on assessments and whatnot for frontline providers, and also having more mental health support for our frontline providers as well. But we're really thankful for this opportunity to implement this BPG work, because truly, because of this opportunity, we were able to raise awareness on the importance of suicide prevention and advocating for improved practices at VHA. Thank you.
So, as mentioned, my name is Adam Ben. I'm the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at VHA Home Healthcare. And so the BPG that I'd like to talk about is the work that we did in terms of addressing harassment and violence in the workplace. And our intervention was significant for two reasons. The first is that we chose to focus on personal support workers, recognizing that, again, a lot of the violence and harassment is directed to them. At VHA, that is one of our largest groups. Also, that we wanted to actually ensure that we're looking at all forms of violence and harassment, because again, I think that on a day-to-day basis, home care workers deal with harassment. It could be a yell, a slap, and we wanted that to be reported. We didn't want it to be something that was just, oh, this is part of my day-to-day, so how do we actually capture some of those initiatives? And so our goal was to identify clients and caregivers who may pose a risk for harassment prior to the first visit, so we implemented a screening tool, increase awareness and education regarding workplace violence and harassment, support personal support workers in reporting workplace violence and harassment, no matter how minor the incident. So if it happened, we want to hear about it. Enable peer-to-peer support to prevent workplace violence and harassment. I think one of the things we recognized was that workers had strategies for dealing with these types of incidents. And so how do we actually get that information to worker, considering that people are in a home care environment and don't always have the opportunity to speak to one another? And provide frontline workers with timely support from supervisors. So again, ensuring that supervisors have an opportunity to respond to some of those incidents. So we had a 32-week pilot, and during that time, 21% of PSWs reported out of the total PSWs. And so, again, I think it's important to recognize that these are incidents that typically would not be reported, right? If someone picks up a chair and throws a chair, that's reported. But if you get slapped by a client as you're trying to provide care, you may or may not choose to report that. And so it's helpful to understand how many times per day do workers actually get harassment and violent incidents. And so out of those reports, 52% of them had client-specific strategies. So again, from peer-to-peer opportunities for peers to share what strategies actually work in terms of addressing aggression and violence. And so you can see that the number one incidents were verbal aggression. And so again, those are sort of things where a client might yell or snap. And again, those things are typically not reported. Other incidents, harassment and violence were also reported. And so what we achieved, we had about 48 out of 70 staff who received training, and that training was super important in terms of reminding staff that violence is not acceptable, harassment is not acceptable, you need to report. Basically, our intervention required staff to report after every visit. So after your visit, very simple, did violence or harassment happen? Yes, no. And so there was 55,000 opportunities to report, and out of that, 16,000 reports were completed. So again, I think we recognize that we want to get more of that, but our challenge was that it wasn't actually built into the system. So you received an email, and you had to respond to an email in the pilot, so it actually was a little bit cumbersome, but we still had a great amount of PSWs who actually reported, which demonstrated the value of it. 40 reported incidents, of which 21 requests for follow-up. And so again, I think managers and supervisors get concerned when they're like, what do you mean you don't want any follow-up? That's actually a barrier for people reporting if they feel as if your supervisor's going to call, especially if it's something that's easily managed. But it does provide an opportunity, because as you can see, there were 2 cases that were escalated once we saw that there was actually trends in terms of the reports that we were getting. I think one of the key features of this was the ability for people to share strategies, and I just want to finish off by sharing 3 strategies. So an example of an easily managed event, he has the tendency to touch you inappropriately while assisting him to walk to the bed or the couch. With the help of his private caregiver, we always remind him that his actions are not acceptable and not to do it. And that's great because it's also reflecting some of the language that we were teaching during education and training on how to address these concerns. You still can provide care, but we need to reinforce to the client that this is not acceptable regardless of whether there's other issues that are there, right? We need to sort of make sure that's being said. Challenging to manage event. I asked him to calm down. I speak to him softly in a calm manner. And something that's more challenging is when there's a patient that has a language barrier that causes an issue. So I am presenting later on if you want some more information on this, but very high-level outcomes that came from this project. For me, working in human resources, the biggest thing is to be able to get staff to more comfortably identify harassment and violence, get that data, so when we go and say, this is the percentage of our staff that are dealing with this, we have accurate numbers, and then we can actually push for some larger changes in the sector. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, and we will have all the questions at the end, assuming we have time. Thank you very much. We will go now with Sally Do from Lanzhou.
Hello everyone, I'm Do Xinman. English name is Sally. I am the chief nurse of London University Second Hospital. It's my great honor to give a recording presentation for this international plenary panel. First of all, I will take a brief introduction about my hospital. My hometown Gansu province is located in the northwest of China, and my hospital is the largest general hospital in there. We have 2,367 nurses, and it is a 95 years old well-known hospital with very rich culture. My hospital has been BPSO since 2018. Here is the working path, and this is our working structure. Now we are doing 5 BPGs. Next is our work over the past 5 years. 2018, it was the very beginning of our BPSO's journey. Heather and May, they are our 2 mentors. In fact, we have a wonderful beginning of BPSO. In 2019, I've been to Toronto for the annual conference, and my colleagues, my champions, they gave presentation around the world, such as Canada, Singapore, Taiwan, Hong Kong, etc. In 2020, we did regular trainings, meetings, communications as usual. At the same time, our BPSO team made a special contribution to fighting against COVID-19. From 2021 to 2022, we held online and on-site meetings and trainings of communications because of the COVID-19, including the champions workshop and the academic exchanging meetings. At the same time, we carry out science education each year. We also have made a great achievement in the clinical practical, including the projects, a bunch of papers, and the patents for imitation related to the implementation of BPJs. About the education manuals, we have 15, and all they have been applied in the clinical practice. They are very popular among the patients, the nurses, even the doctors. In clinical practice, we have solved the difficult wound cases. And we also applied Chinese traditional medicine to better manage pain. About the BPSO's publicity, we have a lot of ways, such as whiteboard in the ward, such as the website, WeChat, newspapers, and the magazines. Finally, I would like to share the changes with all of you. Up to now, we have 417 champions. They came from various nursing professional fields, and we work together with the doctors, the patients, even their families. We understand the disease process, and we improve the patient's self-management skills, and we focus on the better treatment outcomes. And we are sharing, we are happy. Here I would like to thank Doris, Heather, and all the colleagues of BPSO. Thanks for your help and support. And we believe just to do it, we will be better and better. Thanks for your attention. Thank you.
So through the colleagues here, Sheshe to Sally, it's all proportional. It's all proportional. We can talk more after. It's amazing how you train those large numbers of people, how you implement, right? An interesting challenge that is well done. Marjorie Conan from East Toronto Health Park.
To see my slides, I better move.
Very good. From
okay?
East Toronto Health Partners. And yeah, here we hear sometimes a bit muffled because the sound goes like this, right? You guys, I checked before, you guys hear well. That's supposed to go, the sound there. So,
Is the sound okay here? Yeah.
Yes.
It's good. All right.
Very good.
Excellent. So thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to share. I'm Marjorie Conan from East Toronto Health Partners, and we are proud to be a BPSO OHT approaching designation. As we started our journey in 2020, we didn't get to meet any other BPSOs in person until this year's symposium, so it's really lovely to see BPSO representatives here, and looking forward to talking to other BPSO OHTs at the breakout session shortly. My first slide is a very complicated diagram, and it's taken from Europe, but it's actually probably very comparable to our experiences here. This is to show pathways that seniors may experience in navigating to long-term care. And the reason I'm showing it is the question that kind of is our challenge as Ontario health teams working on best practices is how can we provide evidence-based care and best practice, apply best practice guidelines across many different settings and many different providers, spanning from primary care to hospital care, long-term care, community social care, home care, rehab, and how would that work? And really, it's an exciting challenge and a new challenge for us to think about the opportunities to use the BPSO program across many different providers. And if you can see any of the red lines here, it shows all the many gaps that clients and individuals experience as they travel across these different sectors and settings. So I won't spend too much time talking about the Ontario Health Team model. I hope some folks are familiar with it, but just as a very brief background, the current experience of people in Ontario is really that they have separate interactions with each different setting or provider. I see my primary care doctor. I may go to get services in a hospital. I may get services at home. But all of those are very different, distinct experiences, and I, as a patient, have to kind of carry my story and information across all those different care experiences. The idea of Ontario Health Teams, as we get more and more mature, is that people will experience their team from their care as a care from one connected team. And what about the BPSO OHT model? How can we apply evidence-based practice and robust staff engagement to support Ontario Health Teams in this journey of becoming one connected team and one connected team that applies evidence-based best practices? So I think this is the outcomes panel. So there's a couple of outcomes in this slide that I can share, early outcomes. Our first best practice guideline that we started in 2020 was person-family-centered care. It's a required guideline for all BPSO OHTs. And some of our work involved developing an e-learning module that talked about person-family-centered care in the context of Ontario Health Team integrated systems of care. And it was a background on what East Toronto Health Partners is as an OHT and how we as a network of organizations are committed to person-family-centered care. So I put on the slide, we had 1,350 staff trained. That's actually 2,400 I learned since making the slide. So it's been really a lot of people touching this e-learning module. And most of the people who've taken the training are at Michael Garron Hospital, our main hospital partner. But actually the development of the module was at Wood Green Community Services. There was a leader there in organizational learning who pulled together a committee that included VHA and our community health centers. And so it was really a joint effort. And we have now a strong e-learning module on person-family-centered care. Advanced clinical practice fellowships have been a big part of our journey, and if you're interested to learn about these, we're talking about them this afternoon at 1 o'clock. Jen Ragundan is going to be sharing all our learnings. That's the second bullet here. The third is about how we really leverage the best practice guideline and the person-family-centered care indicator across the network of organizations to work toward a common quality agenda. So we thought as an OHT we should have some common quality goals across many organizations and sectors, but we didn't really know where to start. And because we had taken on person-family-centered care as a guideline across numerous partners, we said, let's start there. Let's adopt the outcome indicator. We're all doing different kinds of patient surveys, and let's work together on gathering data on person-family-centered care, on people's involvement in their care planning, and share that information in a common quality approach. Our second guideline has been falls prevention and reducing injury from falls. One of the outcomes there, still in progress, but making good progress, is that there is a falls screening tool that is being implemented in a community health center that previously did not do routine falls screening in primary care. And there were some great tools that we were able to draw on, but there's been a rigorous process that we've applied, thanks to the leaders there, to really understand how to build in a tool into an EMR, an electronic medical record, and have it be used by an interprofessional team that really works as a team, so not just one provider, but many providers contributing to falls screening in primary care. And care transitions is Transitions in Care and Services is the guideline that we're just beginning. But just to share how our journey has taken us to a new place, we're working on our gap analysis, opportunity analysis right now. And because of our learnings, we're doing it so differently than we did when we started. So in the first guideline, person-family-centered care, each organization in the OHT kind of met with their staff and maybe one or two patient representatives. And each organization did their own gap analysis, and then we kind of put it together. In the falls gap analysis, we were able to work in a more connected way, and we had a group of students that looked at all the organizational policies for falls and looked at all the screening tools used in our organizations for falls risk screening, and looked at all the patient education material that were used across the organizations, and we started to look at that more as a whole, and then do the gap analysis really in a collected way. But for care transitions, now we are using some of the methodologies from our Advanced Clinical Practice Fellowship to gather information in a much more structured way, and also really focusing on talking to our community members about their experiences with transitions. And I think that it's been quite a journey as we've progressed in how we work on our guidelines as a partnership. So the last few slides here are just about a learning health system. I think I had a note on this. So learning health system is a key phrase for us because we've been working on updating our operating model or governance approach in our Ontario Health team. And one of our areas of focus that we've landed on is a learning health system portfolio, and this is where our best practice Spotlight OHT work sits. And so I want to explain what is a learning health system, or one definition. This came from the Institute of Medicine. It's described as a system in which you have science, informatics, incentives, and culture all aligned to work toward continuous improvement and innovation, and best practices are seamlessly embedded in the delivery process, and you're capturing new knowledge and learning as you deliver care. So it's a wonderful model to aspire to. So I think we all experience different gaps in applying our health system improvement work. And some of these that were cited in a recent publication from John Lavis, 10 Lessons Learned, about creating rapid learning health systems across Canada. The gaps can be that we don't engage patients enough. Our gaps can be that our data is not linked. We may collect data in one place and see it once a year and not have any way to connect it with other data. Or in the context of OHTs, the data that we have in the hospital isn't connected to the data that we have in primary care or in home care. We're working to, have a culture through our front lines and across the organization for rapid learning and improvement. And often we are missing the analytics competencies that we need. So what we're working toward as an OHT is to address these gaps by engaging patients, connecting assets, establishing a learning culture, and building competencies. And I want to credit RNAO for the great foundation that we have around how to be a learning organization. And I think what we're looking at now is in Ontario Health teams, how can we be a learning system across many organizations? So a few pictures to end off. Just one of the ways we've been working to engage patients is to really support patient caregiver leadership. And some of you may have been yesterday at our talk. My colleagues gave a talk on our Community Advisory Council and our client engagement work, community engagement work, to really have a very, very strong foundation of hearing from voices in the community. We are working to connect assets. One of the examples is the community of science that's been developing, where we bring together people from different organizations who have some similar interests in publication, research, learning, evidence, and strengthening, building on the strengths that we have in our community. And we are happy to also have a chair in patient-oriented research at Michael Garron Hospital. That was just a new position in the last couple of years that's really building the momentum around this. Workshops on quality improvement that involve people from our communities, that involve people from multiple organizations. This has been a great strategy we heard this from patients. They want to be part of the quality improvement conversation, and they don't know necessarily all the terminology or the background, and so we're trying to get everybody across our system to have that foundation in quality improvement. And establishing a learning culture. We're glad to have a research fair in 2022, and thanks to RNAO for visiting that, where we were able to feature a lot of this work that is happening across the system. So we are One East Toronto. You can see some of our partners in this slide. We number over 100 organizations if you look at the partner list, and working very closely with patients and family members and caregivers. I wouldn't say our work has been fast, but if you want to go fast, go alone, and if you want to go far, go together, is the last comment.
Thank you so much. That's wonderful. I like the analogy of the 100 organizations, something to talk about vis-a-vis OHTs that relates to the comment about China and the huge, and how do you do it to really succeed. Thank you. We will go now with Esther González Maria from Investen, the government of Spain. This is the research unit at the government of Spain where this program is anchored. And Dr. Esther González Maria is a nurse, and the program serves nursing and all professions. So.
Good morning. I'm Esther González Maria, and I will do this presentation on behalf of my colleagues Teresa Moreno and Laura Albornoz. We together coordinate the BPSO program in Spain. For you to understand a little bit our context, in the Ministry of Science in Spain, we have the Institute of Health Carlos III, who is the main organization to promote and finance health research. And inside of this institution is Investen, is the nursing and healthcare research unit where we work. But for working on the BPSO program, we need to work together with nurses and health professionals. But these professionals are under the regional health system. In Spain, we have 17 regions. These professionals belong to this health system. So we have to work together. What we do when we make the agreement with RNAO for developing the program and implement the BPSO program, the first thing we do was to translate all the BPGs that RNAO had at this moment and the toolkit to implement this BPG, the second edition. Then we began with BPSO calls for all institutions interested in implementing guidelines and to belong in the program. And we make calls every 3 years. At 2018, we began to have regional hosts. In that way, we are the national host who coordinate across all the country, but we have regional hosts who coordinate the implementation of the program at regional level. Like that, we have the opportunity to grow faster. And we put an additional system to evaluate and to monitor the evolution of the implementation. In one side, we have an application additional to Inquire. In our case, it's called Carevir. And we include additional indicators to those proposed by RNAO, because national health system need to measure additional indicators of interest for all the regions. With this situation, what we can show is our main result. The first one is what we have to do, our evolution, and we have scaling up and scaling out all the program. As you can see in the diagram, we begin in 2012, our first cohort of BPSO. Every 3 years, we add new centers as BPSO candidates. After 2018, we include regional hosts. And now, what we have is 36 BPSO designers, 27 candidates, BPSO candidates. At this moment, we have 8 regional hosts. Remember, we have 17 regions in Spain. And in these cohorts and regional hosts, the total BPG implemented are 28. You can see there a little bit the map of Spain with different candidates and designed BPSO. But as you know, one of the focus, the most important focus, is the health status of our patients, of our population. So for us, one of the main results is the number of population we reach with the program. Now is around 24% of Spanish population is reached by the implementation of BPG across the program, the BPSO program. And we think the professionals are really working with care based on evidence. I have put here some examples of clinical results. For example, this one, you can see this one is the breastfeeding guideline results, where all the processes are grown enormously. DIACs receive education, skin-to-skin contact, all the process related to the guideline recommendations, with near 80–90%. Another example can be, for example, the ostomy care. This is one of the BPG most demanded by BPSO, where we have seen a decrease of complication, statistical significantly. Other example can be the pain. For example, when we measure the pain greater than 5 in a VAS scale, we have decreased the number of people who have this level of pain. And another example is the suicide guideline. We are being able to find a potential decrease of 25% of suicide rate. I think that these are very important results regarding the health of population. But we have another results regarding professionals and institutions, as we expected by the program. The number of champions is enormous now. We have, I don't know, a lot of champions. All of them receive training, not only in the toolkit, not only in the methodology of implementation, but specific to BPG they are implementing. And all of them have grown the participation on the decisions into the institution. So for us it has been very important the involvement of institutions where they have taken the opportunity of give responsibilities and opportunities to clinicians in order to grow clinical leadership. In that way, what we find now is the structures very collaborative and the interaction between vertical and horizontal ways to work, with really innovative and new work dynamics for our system. And another contribution for us is very, very important, the contribution to knowledge. With that number of champions, that number of BPSO, now at this moment, yesterday I verified the number, we have 55 scientific papers. Well, is really very, very important, and this is very motivating for champions and for institutions. And finally, if we see the health system, the results at level of health system, not only national but with regions together. We have scaling up and we have scaling out the program. And now we are consolidating the networks, not only between regions, but between institutions, mainly because they are similar between them. For example, the networks of hospitals with a lot of beds, the networks of primary healthcare centers, or many times these networks are oriented to BPG. For example, across all the BPSO we have networks oriented to implementation of ostomy guideline, or breastfeeding, or pain, or so on. And another important result is the increase of research, not only promoted by us at national level, but inside the BPSO institution. And we think this is a very, very important result. And this is all we have to explain to you. I hope you understand my English. And I'm really very sorry because I can't be there today online because I have another obligation. But I will finish thanking all our BPSO, all our regional hosts, but very especially to all our champions. Many thanks and have a nice day.
That is amazing. And I always say to people that say, I hope you understand my English, I should say that too, but I say my English is better than your Spanish. Okay, so here you go. Or for people in China, I say the same, right? Their English is better than our Chinese and so forth. And Roberts, oh, she already went. Fantastic. Here you go. Hospital Monfort Minister, you will get a little taste of what this social movement of science that the Best Practice Guidelines Program and the celebration of 20 years of BPSOs is all about. Monfort Hospital will share with us briefly.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Anne. I'm a registered nurse. And I say that because I'm truly feeling extra powerful these days. Thank you so much, Dr. Grinspan and the RNAO leadership team. It's just been a fabulous few days. And to all of you, all my new friends, and can't wait to get to work. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my place in our hospital. So I'm in my 35th year of nursing. Well, I'm hoping that wow means there's no way that you could be 57 years old, but my career has been mostly in oncology and hematology, and I've been lucky enough to have an advanced sort of leadership role in palliative care for the last 20 years. And I was kind of scooped up by the Monfort Hospital, and at first I was like, yeah, really? Oh, yeah. And then 12 years ago, I became part of their family, and there's just never been any looking back. And in this presentation, I'm hoping to give you an idea of I'm basically a product of the BPSO culture at our hospital, less a pioneer like so many of you, but I think sharing some of the outcomes from just that culture and the support we get at our organization, I think will be really kind of interesting and cool. My family is, I think, watching virtually, so hello. And hopefully, my Monfort family, so hopefully I represent all of you well because you deserve the recognition. You already heard many times we have 3 designations with our BPSO, great partnership with RNAO. So I'm just going to kind of briefly go through a little bit of some of those outcomes that we talk about. Now, it's been since 2009 that we started this journey, so before I arrived at the hospital. And at the moment, we have about 11 active BPGs ongoing, and they ebb and flow, just like everybody else. Every year has a different, I think, feel to it. Our leads are interdisciplinary. And we collaborate quite a bit. You know, the thing about the BPGs and this is how my little brain sees it and how it translates into our everyday work, is that, you know, the importance of making sure our strategies and how we are sort of implementing this best practice is meaningful, ultimately, and not just something that has been sort of proposed for us. And as a nurse of my generation, I can speak to how incredibly meaningful that is. These are some of the examples of the BPGs that we have, and I say we have 11 active, but apparently there's 2 on the horizon, and I'm sort of thinking of one because of all of you. You got me thinking about few things to work on. Now, you know, when we talk about our partnership with RNAO that we all have, and you look at all the different partnerships in our healthcare system, so whether we're talking about research, academics, community, OHT, you know, they're obvious partnerships because we all have the same mission, vision, core values, you know, mandates. But, you know, when I look at this grouping of partners, I see, by the way, is BPSO in French. I say, this is where we say, nurses, we see you. You know, nurses, we support you and we value you in our institution. And that feels really good. Now, we've talked a lot about champions, and I wanted to share this particular story because, you know, there's that formality of champions, which we love and respect and need. But what we've discovered at our hospital is when you have that culture of champions, some champions find you. And these are 2 examples. This blue butterfly that you see in the lovely nurse top left corner, Gabrielle, I received an email one morning saying, hey, Anne, oh my God, we were on night shift the other day, and for some reason we were particularly boisterous and loud and laughing and talking, and then when we learned that the madame right across the nursing station was actually at end of life, she says, we were devastated because we felt we had been disrespectful. So not only did she share that with me, she proposed an initiative. So of course, we grabbed it and we ran with it. And at our hospital, when somebody is at the end of life, we have a blue metal butterfly just on the outside of the door, just as a symbol to sensitize people that in this room, there is a grieving family and somebody at the end of their life. It has been bigger than we even imagined. It's so simple and yet so impactful. But this came from a self-identified champion who came to me. Same idea with the noise pollution in hospitals, which has been identified as an issue. Nurse in the ICU took the initiative of having the ear with the lighting on it to sort of sensitize us to, you know, how much noise we were making in our particular sectors. It is now on every unit, and everyone's aware of it, and everybody tries to respect it. Now we have, with our formal champions and with all of our teams basically at the hospital, we have des journées thématiques, so, you know, days where we all get together in the auditorium and we have kiosks on all kinds of different practices to review, and they're sort of a fun-loving type environment, not super formal. And of course the data, some of the leads who have, you know, their data from Enquire, they will use that data in huddles to kind of say, hey, look at how great we're doing, or look at, ooh, something's changed. What are the barriers that we maybe have, you know, need to re-identify, and also just getting tips from one another, you know, saying, you know, this really worked for me last week. And so the data has been an integral part for a lot of the BPGs. Now, we also have a pre-designation for BPSO Ontario Health Team designation. And our project is led by Camille Brunet, who is an advisor with professional practice. And we received support from RNAO, so we had an advanced clinical practice fellowship program aligned with the Patient and Family Centered Care, BPG. And this was a pilot project that really was postpartum wellness clinic, like focused on screening young mothers, new mothers, for mental health issues, worries, and the issue, the problem with it was that they didn't have primary care access. So with our public health department and MOFA, they ran a one-year project to screen these new mothers and make sure they had access to specialized mental health care. This project has ended. They're analyzing the data, and when I went to ask Camille about, how is this all going, there was a lot of buzz and excitement about, oh, well, there are new partnerships, and oh, there are new initiatives, and very keen to sort of entertain our new BPG, so the Transitions in Care and Services. And then we are a Francophone host. This is really cool. In the slide of the participants in the top left corner is a real pearl at our hospital. Judith McKenna is our professional practice advisor, and she is our calm, soothing, steady Freddy, BPG, BPSO, RNAO rep. She's just everything, and she just has such an impact on all of us. I just wanted to highlight her, and she's also leading the Francophone host initiative. So we are mentoring, coaching 2 hospitals at the moment, one in Kapuskasing and one in Switzerland. Wow. Mm-hmm. I'd love to sort of say, wow, yay me, but I don't do anything with it. Even though I think Kapuskasing is entertaining the end-of-life BPG, so I'm hoping I get to be involved. So here's a few just activities that have come from our work. In October of 2022, we hosted the International Francophone Nurses Congress in Ottawa, and one of the days after the conference, we on the accueilli, we received so many of the participants from around the world to our hospital, where we were able to share what we were doing with our best practice and support from RNAO. So that's me on the left, talking about palliative care, and Roxane Riando is our BSO nurse who leads delirium and dementia. She's a force to be reckoned with. If she were here now, she'd be talking to you about all of her wonderful ideas and success. And some of you, or maybe all of you, know Valérie Chaplin, because she's a real champion with RNAO. She's our wound nurse, and she has written a book, in her free time. So this is her pratique exemplaire en soins des plaies. She's a later nurse and has had a bigger impact, I think, than anybody. We sort of tease her at the hospital because we say she makes the rest of us look bad, but we mean it with affection. And we have 2 published articles. One of them I will be reviewing at about 11:25 in the Carmichael room if you're interested. And our NP actually with dementia has also published an article. So lessons learned, these are all things we've been sharing about. I just want to highlight that our hospital puts a lot of resource and effort into our activities, and we have new advisory professional practice positions this year that is unreal. That the support and keeping things moving, the flow is obvious and much, much appreciated. We're all dealing with the same sort of challenges, and I added the one about some BPGs are sexier than others, because palliative care, I gotta say, it's probably like my BPG sort of fell on my head. You know, everybody just wants to be involved, and I get a lot of automatic support. Where some of the other ones, you know, they got to really get creative in some of their approach. So yeah, hopefully I covered everything. But thank you again for this wonderful opportunity.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity. I feel humbled to come last after these amazing presentations. As an introduction, I'm also a registered nurse. I'm not going to say how many years. I am the Vice President of Quality and Clinical Services for Universal Care Canada, Inc. And same like many others, English is not my first language. So moving to the next one, Universal Care became BPSO host. And I'm going to talk about the positive outcomes that came with this pre-designation. We are in year 2, and we decided to start this journey in 2020, I believe, during the second wave of COVID-19 pandemic. The reason why we wanted to do this, we had some excellent example with 2 of our long-term cares that Universal Care manages, that one of them implemented 21 best practice guidelines within 1 year, and a second one that implemented 5, both fully designated. And we wanted to maintain the focus on caring for residents based on their needs, in addition to infection control prevention practices. Universal Care, it's a management company, and as a result of becoming a BPSO host, which is the first type of BPSO for long-term care in the world, I would say. Hopefully more will come. What that provided by doing this, it created a standardized approach to everything we do, and it ended up to change in culture. So talking about outcomes, I know numbers are important and they tell a story, but it's more than that when it comes to the positive that this journey ended up doing for the residents that we serve and live in the homes we manage. So talking about BPSO model, I'm not going to spend too much time on this page, as you will have, I'm sure my boss will allow me to give the slides. So talking about the highlights, and we are looking mostly at 2021, 2023, as we are not finished with this year. We also have champions that are best practice champions, over 265 across of our homes. And same like we heard before, we do have professionals that do approach us to become champions, and we also have residents and families that approach us and became champions in best practice. The culture change became that when we speak about care, that's the first thing we think about. What's the best practice? What's the evidence? What's the literature that we can access? And as we know, RNAO, it's the best practice when it comes to long-term care and healthcare in general, based on the documentation we can access and all the tools. We implemented officially and formally the person and family-centered care the assessment and management of pain and promotion of safety, finding alternatives to approaches to the use of restraints. And who attended yesterday's presentation from Universal Care and Regency Park, that's one example where by implementing these practice guidelines, not only we achieved, but also maintained in that home alternatives with zero use of restraints and zero use of psychotropic medication without a diagnosis, zero pain, zero worsened pain. So going from wherever to zero, that's amazing, talking about quality of life. We also, as you can see on the right side, one of the positive outcomes and opportunities, we were able from the beginning not only to be part of the working group and work along RNAO members to develop and implement the clinical pathways, and we are presently still members of the working group, and we started as a pilot on all of our homes, same time, with the admission assessment in 24 hours, resident and family-centered care, which again, we open in 24 hours, screening for delirium for all residents admitted in long-term care, and presently working on other clinical pathways that will support to identify through an amazing tool that's interactive and animated, I would say, having on the same page everything that needs to be completed based on answers, receiving alerts, and receiving clinical suggestions that can be actioned upon, access to care plan, both focus, outcomes, and interventions that the nurse that completes it is able to immediately put it in that resident EMR file, and summary at the end. And it's all based on best practice guidelines that's developed by RNAO. We worked on palliative approach to care in the last 12 months and end-of-life care during the last day and hours. Again, opportunity, West York region, working developing a best practice 4 modules education for palliative care in the OHT, and liaised with RNAO that ended up having representation to making sure that the education modules will contain best practice approaches. Talking about journey and milestones, we started with an orientation. It was a virtual orientation. However, during that time, all the universal care staff went in different long-term care homes, and I was in one in Richmond Hill area, a Marianne home. Residents and family members attended, and they were so excited about what we are trying to do and wanting to learn and know what does this mean. So talking about again, opportunities and positive outcomes, we were very happy and had the opportunity to share what we did with delegation from Australia, Chile, and China, and we were able to show some of our homes during the site visits. Talking about some numbers, this is a different long-term care from the start. When we looked at what we want to monitor, not only we look at the indicators related to the best practice guidelines we implemented, but also indicators related to other programs that could have been affected by them. And what we noticed, For example, false decreased more than 0.5%. Behaviors that worsen decreased 0.5%. Pressure ulcers decreased more than 0.5%. Residents with pain decreased in this particular situation from 26.5 to 1.2, and residents with worsened pain decreased from 8.2 to 1.5. So, being a host, again, empowerment and transfer of knowledge. We learn from RNAO members how to be coaches. So the entire clinical team at Universal Care do have homes they coach. We work in collaboration with RNAO. And the homes work with us, and we work with different teams in the homes to make sure that we achieve what we plan to achieve. One of the deliverables we have our own Universal Care BPSO Symposium. This year is second year, October 4th, so we have a full day. Lots of wonderful speakers, both through the collaboration from RNAO as well as who we tried to bring in. And it's also an opportunity where we celebrate our homes and we have actual celebration and providing them with the acknowledgement of what they accomplished and the words based on our pillars of success, that when you talk about our pillars of success within Universal Care, we link it to best practice language and what does that mean. An example of Universal Care tools which we developed corporately and then translated that within each home and supported them to work through in order to achieve what they wanted to achieve. Overall, throughout all of us, by each home implementing their own best practice guidelines and having their own achievements, obviously affected what does it mean for Universal Care as an overall management company and best practice spotlight organization host. We reduced restrained and restricted devices by 96%, 92% reduction in bedrail usage by finding alternative approaches, decreased pain by 34% and worsened pain by 39%. So talking about, thank you, our goals, I'm not going to spend too much time because I want to leave for questions and answers, but it's all about how do we work with our homes, how do we support them, and I can say as a corporate clinical team, we actually part of the teams in those homes, and we visit them very often, and what they do, we can do in that home if needed. So that's the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria, very, very much. I don't think we have time for questions and answers, but maybe at the end, if there is a space, Susan, then we can accommodate. I just want to summarize a little bit common threads that I heard from all the colleagues. So robust VPGs are helping you. Tools for implementation, both the methodology, clinical pathways, other aspects. EDI, important, essential that we address that. And of course, meaningful and a clear measurement. And what you have created, all of you as a result, is learning cultures, which is one of the goals of the program, and you do it in spades. You have done it individually in organizations and massively across organizations and in fact across countries when we speak about China and when we speak about Chile and when we speak about Spain and when we speak about OHTs, 100, mi Dios. And when we speak about universal care and sharing cultures, which is beautiful, and how you share with one another, and nothing of that will be good if you didn't have at the end of the day the impact. And we saw it in all of your presentations, the impact of on persons, called patients or called residents, persons, their families, on staff, on organizations, on health systems. All of it is visible, and we congratulate you. Thank you. You spoke about suicidal ideation and suicide prevention. I got a call, I believe that about 3 weeks ago, from the government of Spain. Can we fasten the review of the next edition of that guideline? Major problem after COVID on youth. And yes, so you will have the next edition likely at the end of 2024, so it's already in the works. So just so I wanted you to know the important and difficult work that you do. I want to introduce Minister Stan Cho, first by saying, Minister, thank you for accommodating us in a last-minute call. This was a meeting that Minister Calandra was scheduled to come, and as you know, there was a change in roles. And Minister Cho very generously accommodated us in a last-minute transition. First elected in 2018, Minister Cho served as parliamentary assistant to the President of the Treasury Board and to Minister of Finance before being appointed to Cabinet as Associate Minister of Transportation in 2021. Upon his re-election in 2022, congratulations, Minister Cho was once again called to Cabinet by Premier Doug Ford and most recently appointed as Ontario Minister of Long-Term Care in September 2023. Before joining politics, because I guess there is life before politics, I don't know if there is life after politics, but that's a different story. Although the movie yesterday of the Premier, I must say it publicly in case that people have not heard, and I needed to check the facts just that before I say it is really true. I always check any party, any politician, I check if it's true what they said to me. Yes, the Green Belt, for those of us and RNO as a whole that was involved in mobilizing nurses and others to get the Green Belt back, it's back. Well done. So I took the opportunity, Minister, I think you should know, because before you hear from the Premier, it's better that you know directly, that I gave him a call to say well done. And of course, as always we do, Minister, and you also should know that, but probably Minister Calandra already told you about that, always there is a next ask. And so my next ask for the Minister was to stop speaking about the rhetoric of indoctrinating kids in schools. Two LGBTQ+ kids, Minister, in RNO's book, and trans kids and youth have the same human rights as anybody else. So I left that message, and I hope you will help us. Kids are kids. And once we do that check mark, there is more. But I did say to colleagues yesterday, talking casually, that the Premier Force listens to RNO, and we appreciate that. So before joining politics, as I was saying, Minister Cho began his career at Mercedes-Benz. Well, maybe we should put that in the list for us. Every nurse wants a Mercedes-Benz. Maybe you can announce it today. Where he worked his way up from an entry-level role to become one of the company's auditors. Did you find anything, Minister? Yes, he did. Here you go. It was during this time that he traveled extensively throughout Ontario to communities large and small. Born in Rexdale and raised in Willowdale, Minister Cho proudly holds the distinction of being the first Canadian-born person of Korean descent to hold public office in Canada. Minister, congratulations. And some of us were in Korea because we had the International Council of Nurses meeting there a few years ago. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And the food? Okay, some of us go by the food too. Minister, please join us at the podium to bring remarks. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction, Dr. Greenspan. I gotta say, I recognize the beginning of that introduction. The middle part was not quite how I recall it, but it is a pleasure to be here this morning. You know, you're right. It's been just a couple of weeks for me in this role, and 17 days in, it's a lot. I'm going to be honest with you. But it is a big honor, and I do want to share with you, actually, before I get into remarks, my first 48 hours on the job. Labor Day, actually, I woke up and I thought, I haven't been home in a while. I've been working a lot. So I promised my wife in the morning that I was going to get through the whole honey-do list. I mean, clean out the garage, organize the closets, clear out the junk in the basement. I'm just going to go to the gym first. Go to the gym, I get a call. You know the Premier calls from a block number. Yes, I know he calls you a lot. He speaks very highly of you. And then I got the call that would change the course of that day and my life. And the first thing I did was go home. And my wife said, well, that was quick. Ready to get to work? And I said, I am, but not in the way you think. So the honey-do list is still there, but I'll get to it eventually. That second 24 hours into the 48 hours now, one of the first things I did, it wasn't read the 956 pages on my desk. It's still there. But one of the first things I did is I wanted to get through some calls. So my first call from the office was actually to my parents. My second call was to Doris. And I'm glad I called you. The call was unique. It's not what I expected at all. So my third call was actually to Minister Calandra, and just checking in on what he thought. And he had nothing but the best words to say about the RNAO and Dr. Greenspan. So I want to thank you for that. I'll talk about that first call to my parents a little bit later. It's actually a funny call as well. But I do also want to point out that, David, our Director of Communications, was with Minister Calandra, and he's there at the back. And he is an excellent writer. And he has written this 14-minute speech, 1,374 words. And I heard from Minister Calandra that he writes great speeches. Now, I know Paul. He doesn't read anything that is written for him. And while Paul and I are very different in many ways, we share that. So, David, I'm not going to read your speech. I didn't tell you that this morning, but it is so well written. If you do want to read it, I'll just leave it over here. And have a look later. What I do want to talk about, though, is Anne and Maria. I'm really glad I got to see your presentations. I think that's just serendipitous. Now, I missed the others, but if you could maybe, Doris, send me the slides, I would love to go through that, because it validates a lot of what our government's trying to do. Now, I'm not going to go through all of the numbers, but we are investing a historic amount in building capacity. Now, first thing I said when we got to this sort of ministry was, I'd like to get away from calling them beds. I want to call them homes. Because they are homes, and we have to, not just build those homes for the seniors that we have today. We've known for decades that we had an aging population. We've known that for a long time. We've also got record immigration, and I think we're fooling ourselves if we say all the people coming here today to this country, to this province, are younger. They're not. Seniors are moving here as well. That means we've got a problem that's been compounded by years of lack of investment. That's not a political statement. That is, governments of all stripes have failed our seniors to invest in that sector. So in many ways, we're paying that catch-up now with $10 billion, and it's a lot to build 30,000 new beds, to redevelop 28,000 new beds. But we all know that's also not enough. We need to invest into actually having staff to watch those homes. And that's the $4.9 billion. You know about the 4 hours of daily care we are trying to achieve. That's not easy to do. And of course, we're going to need your help with that. But, you know, we all have a role to play. In my first 17 days, I've been to 4 long-term care homes to hear firsthand what's happening. And my goal is to get to as many as I can. Your symposium looks amazing on October 4th. If you can get me out of question period, I'll be at that one too. But that slide presentation, Maria, where you went through some of the numbers, when you're talking about investing in a clinical pathways program, which our government did, thank you. You know, and we've also invested in providing homes up to $10,000 so they can enroll into that amazing program. What is most meaningful to me, though, is sometimes you hear about programs, dollars, spending, base funding, multi-year planning, and you lose sight of what it is we're doing this for. That brings it home for me, and even your butterfly on the door, that's the stuff that means something. And I think we all need to remember that's what we should be focused on. So I would love to see some of that data, to take it back with me to the ministry and share with my colleagues in cabinet and caucus. You know, I have a lot of numbers that I can go here through, but that's not the important thing, and that's not why I agreed to speak this morning. Because the reason I agreed, well, first of all, Doris doesn't take no for an answer, so it was actually no choice. She literally texted me 12 different times I could have come, and I was like, okay, we'll be there. But the real reason I'm here, and it has to do with call number 1 in that first 48 hours. You know, I called my mom, and she's fantastic. I mean, she's amazing. She said, I'm proud of you. And then she handed the phone over to my dad. Any Koreans in this room? Okay, well, some of you may understand from different backgrounds that Koreans, fathers, sons, they don't exchange kind words very often. And so, you know, he didn't say, I'm proud of you, although I know he is. He just said, you work for me now. And so after a moment of digesting, I said, well, Dad, you work for Mom, and you always have. But my parents are seniors, and, you know, he's not wrong. And I think back to their journey in this country. 50 years ago, they came here with little more than the clothes on their back, worked 7 days a week. You know, I remember those first memories. Growing up poor, I didn't know that. I just played in the corner of the convenience store. I just did homework there. I thought we had it good. You know, I saw them work 7 days a week. Rexdale in the 80s was a little rough. They went through some things. But through a lifetime of hard work, when they retired, they employed 200 people in this great country of ours. They lived the Canadian dream. So when I think back to my incredibly humbling journey, and you shared some of that this morning, Doris, it's really with my parents in mind, it's with my senior parents in mind that I take this role, and that's why I'm so proud to be here. It's because we owe our seniors. We owe them the dignity of a home that they're comfortable in. They built this country, and we need to make sure we take care of them. And that's why I'm so proud to be here in my role as Minister of Long-Term Care. You know, Doris, I can't thank you enough for this. Thank you for sharing your opinions about other legislation that maybe doesn't have to do so much with the great work you're doing. But I liked what you said about, you know, nobody ever gets it right. Perfect, right? 100% of the time. That's not reasonable. So my promise to you is, you know, let's work together. I know you do some of the work for our loved ones that many cannot do. It's an incredible profession that you do, and we value you. We don't say it enough. I'm saying it right here. And my promise back to you, the industry, to all of you, is that we will be here, I will be here to listen, whether we get it right or we need to improve. So as we move forward with record spending, not to depersonalize it, the resources are there. We need to make sure that we are consulting with the experts to make sure the resources go in the right place. That Clinical Pathways program is a great example. I'm going to be traveling the world. I don't believe we should limit ourselves to the experience here in Ontario or to Canada. And I'm going to say proudly, look at this program we have right here in Ontario. We need to do more of that. And with your help, I know we can create an environment where our seniors are taken care of with dignity, however they need to be taken care of, and we will continue to improve the programs that we offer in our long-term care sector here constantly with your help. I want to thank you for giving me the time this morning, Dr. Greenspan. If you need anything at all, she has my cell phone and she knows how to get a hold of me. Thank you so much for having me this morning.
Thank you, Minister. Here, first, already a standing ovation. Come here, Minister, be recognized. I think the humbleness that you show and the willingness to work together says a lot. And tell your father that, yes, he should be proud of you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. So we will have a little break. I think, Minister, don't go yet because I know people will want pictures. This is why I kind of move a bit and you generously agree. And I think it's important for our colleagues.
Just do like maybe a quick video.
Here you go. Yes, we can. Here we go. Yes, let's do. Okay. And where is the Champions program music? My sir there. We are the champions. Yeah, yes, he will put the music. Yesterday he did too. Just, he says, wait a minute. Yes. No. You go sing. Please sing. We are the champions.
You got the gist of it?
Good idea, Susan. Probably people will want pictures here. I don't know. Okay, so if any team, I'm assuming Maria will be the first here, wants pictures with the minister, not only people from long-term care, OHTs are part of long-term care, have long-term care, and all of us have long-term care. So you are welcome to get pictures. I definitely want a short video. I promise I will not do announcements about policy matters. But Minister, just a correction, those are not only my views, they're the views of 52,000 nurses. Voluntary. It's not mandatory like the union.
That's amazing.
Something.